The morning sun cast long shadows across the ruins of what had once been the greatest dragon city in the galaxy. Zara Chen adjusted her environmental suit and checked her scanner readings one more time. The atmospheric processors had been working for 3 months now, and the air was finally breathable for humans. She was the first xenobiologist to set foot on Drakmor Prime since the Great Plague had wiped out 90% of the dragon population. These dragons had been humanity's greatest allies in the war against the Void Swarm. Their massive ships, powered by bio-neural networks that could process combat data faster than any artificial intelligence, had turned the tide when all seemed lost. But victory came at a terrible price. The Swarm's final weapon, an engineered plague that targeted draconic DNA, had spread through their homeworld like wildfire. Zara's boots crunched on crystalline debris as she made her way through the abandoned nursery complex. Her heart ached as she passed empty incubation chambers that should have been filled with the next generation of dragons. The silence was overwhelming. No rumbling purrs, no excited chirps, no wise ancient voices discussing philosophy and quantum mechanics. Her scanner beeped softly, detecting a faint life sign deeper in the complex. Zara's pulse quickened. The orbital surveys had suggested there might be survivors, but finding actual proof felt like discovering a miracle. She followed the signal through collapsed corridors and emergency-sealed blast doors, using her plasma cutter to clear the way. The signal led her to what appeared to be a reinforced nursery chamber, its biolock still functioning after all this time. Through the translucent walls she could see movement. Something small and dark was huddled in the corner, barely visible among the nest materials. Zara's hands trembled as she interfaced her suit's computer with the chamber's systems. The biolocks were designed to only open for adult dragons, but her team had spent months studying draconic technology. She had the override codes, theoretically. The chamber hissed open with a soft whoosh of equalized air pressure. Inside, curled up in a nest of what looked like metallic silk, was the smallest dragon Zara had ever seen. It couldn't have been more than a few days old when the plague hit, and somehow it had survived in stasis for 3 years. The hatchling was barely the size of her forearm. With scales that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue, its wings were folded tight against its body, and its large golden eyes were closed. For a terrifying moment, Zara thought it might be dead, but then she saw the faint rise and fall of its chest. As she knelt beside the nest, the hatchling's eyes fluttered open. They were the most beautiful thing Zara had ever seen, like molten gold flecked with silver stars. But there was something wrong with the way it looked at her. Instead of the typical draconic pride and intelligence, she saw only confusion and fear. The little creature tried to scramble backward when it saw her, its tiny claws scraping against the chamber walls. It made soft, distressed chirping sounds that broke Zara's heart. This poor baby had been alone for so long, and now it was terrified of the first living being it had encountered. Zara slowly removed her helmet, letting her long black hair fall around her shoulders. She had read that dragons responded better to uncovered faces, something about reading emotional expressions through facial micro-movements. The hatchling stopped trying to escape and tilted its head, studying her with those incredible golden eyes. "Hello, little one," Zara whispered in her gentlest voice. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." The hatchling made a soft questioning trill, its head tilting further to one side. Zara could see its scales were dull and patchy in places, signs of malnutrition and stress. How had it survived so long? The chamber's life support systems were remarkable, but they couldn't provide proper nutrition indefinitely. She reached into her pack and pulled out an emergency food bar. It wasn't much, but it might help. She broke off a small piece and held it out to the hatchling. The little dragon sniffed cautiously, then quickly snatched the food and devoured it. "You're hungry, aren't you?" Zara said softly. "When was the last time you had a proper meal?" The hatchling's response was another soft trill, but this one sounded less frightened. It was watching her with obvious curiosity now, its golden eyes tracking every movement she made. Zara offered another piece of food, and this time the hatchling took it more gently from her fingers. As she fed the tiny dragon, Zara noticed something that made her heart clench. The hatchling's scales had areas where they seemed to be growing incorrectly, creating rough patches and asymmetrical patterns. The plague might not have killed this little one, but it had clearly affected its development. In dragon society, physical perfection was highly valued. Adult dragons were magnificent creatures, with scales that shone like precious metals and perfect symmetrical features. This hatchling, with its patchy scales and slight wing asymmetry, would likely be considered defective by traditional dragon standards. But to Zara, it was the most precious thing in the universe. This tiny creature represented hope for an entire species. It was the last known survivor of a civilization that had helped save the galaxy. The hatchling finished eating and looked up at her expectantly. Without thinking, Zara reached out and gently stroked its head with one finger. The little dragon scales were surprisingly warm and smooth despite their irregular pattern. "You're not ugly," she whispered, surprised by the tears in her voice. "You're beautiful. You're perfect just the way you are." The hatchling made a soft purring sound and leaned into her touch. For the first time since entering the chamber, Zara saw something other than fear in those golden eyes. There was trust there, and perhaps even a spark of the legendary dragon intelligence. She knew she had to get this little one to safety. The research station orbiting the planet had medical facilities and xenobiologists who might be able to help with the hatchling's development issues. But more importantly, they needed to contact the surviving dragon colonies and let them know that hope still existed. As Zara carefully lifted the hatchling from its nest, she made a promise to the tiny creature and to the memory of its lost people. She would protect this little dragon, help it grow strong, and ensure that the dragon civilization would rise again. The hatchling settled comfortably in her arms, its warm weight a reminder that sometimes the most important discoveries come in the smallest packages. The research station Harmony's Edge had never housed a dragon before, let alone a plague-affected hatchling. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief medical officer, scratched his beard nervously as he watched Zara settle the tiny creature into the specially prepared biochamber they had constructed in the xenobiology lab. "Are you absolutely certain it's safe?" Webb asked for the third time that morning. "The plague that killed its people? It's not contagious to humans," Zara replied firmly, adjusting the chamber's temperature controls. "We've run every test possible. Besides, this little one has been in isolation for 3 years. If it were going to make anyone sick, it would have happened by now." The hatchling, which Zara had taken to calling Spark because of the way its scales occasionally flickered with inner light, was exploring its new environment with obvious curiosity. The biochamber was roughly the size of a large closet, with multiple levels connected by small ramps. Zara had tried to recreate a dragon nursery environment based on her research, complete with warming stones and soft nesting materials. Spark paused in its exploration to look through the transparent walls at the team of scientists gathered outside. Its golden eyes fixed on Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's linguist who was holding a tablet displaying various dragon language symbols. "Fascinating," Dr. Kim murmured. "Look at how it tracks the symbols. There's definitely recognition there. But is it learning or remembering?" asked Dr. Pavel Novak, the team's evolutionary biologist. "Dragon hatchlings are supposed to have genetic memory patterns that help them learn language and basic concepts quickly." Zara placed her hand against the chamber wall, and Spark immediately moved to press its tiny claws against the same spot from the inside. The gesture made her heart warm, but she couldn't ignore the worried glances her colleagues were exchanging. "Spit it out," she said. "What aren't you telling me?" Dr. Webb cleared his throat uncomfortably. "We've been in contact with the dragon refugee colonies in the Andromeda sector. When we told them about Spark, they want to see it," Dr. Kim finished. "Several elder dragons are en route. They should arrive within the week." Zara felt a chill of apprehension. "That's good news, right? Spark needs to be with its own kind." "Perhaps," Dr. Novak said carefully. "But there's something you should know about dragon culture. Physical perfection is not just aesthetically important to them. It's tied to their social hierarchy and their beliefs about genetic fitness." "What are you saying?" Dr. Webb pulled up a holographic display showing detailed scans of Spark. "The plague affected the hatchling's development in ways we're still trying to understand. Its scale pattern is asymmetrical, its wing structure is slightly off, and its neural pathways show some unusual formations." "Unusual how?" "Different," Dr. Kim said softly. "Not necessarily worse, just different from typical dragon brain development patterns." Zara watched Spark attempting to climb one of the chamber's ramps, its slightly mismatched wings fluttering for balance. To her, these differences made the little dragon more endearing, not less. But she was beginning to understand her colleagues' concerns. You think they'll reject it, she said. It's possible, Dr. Novak admitted. Dragon Society has very strict standards. A hatchling with developmental irregularities might be considered unsuitable for integration into their communities. The word unsuitable hit Zara like a physical blow. She thought of Spark's trusting golden eyes, the way it purred when she spoke to it, how it had reached out to touch her hand through the chamber wall. This wasn't just any dragon hatchling. This was an individual with its own personality and potential. Then we don't let them take it, Zara said firmly. Zara, Dr. Webb said gently, we can't keep a dragon on a human research station indefinitely. It needs proper care, education, and socialization with its own species. What if its own species rejects it? The question hung in the air like a challenge. None of the scientists had a good answer. Over the next few days, Zara spent every free moment with Spark. The hatchling was learning at an incredible rate, despite its apparent developmental differences. It had figured out how to operate the chamber's food dispenser, had learned to respond to its name, and was beginning to understand simple human words. More importantly, Spark was developing a distinct personality. It was curious about everything, gentle in its interactions, and showed remarkable problem-solving abilities. When Dr. Kim presented it with puzzle toys designed for young dragons, Spark solved them in ways that surprised everyone. Instead of using the traditional draconic approaches, it found creative shortcuts that were often more efficient. It thinks differently, Dr. Kim observed one evening as they watched Spark rearrange its nesting materials into an intricate pattern that looked almost artistic. Not wrongly, just differently. Human thinking patterns, Dr. Novak noted with interest. It's been exposed to human interaction during a crucial developmental period. Its neural pathways are adapting. Zara felt a surge of protective instincts. Is that bad? Not bad, Dr. Kim said thoughtfully. Just unprecedented. We're watching the development of something completely new, a dragon with human-influenced cognitive patterns. The significance of this wasn't lost on any of them. Dragons and humans had been allies, but their thinking patterns were fundamentally different. Dragons were logical, hierarchical, and traditional. Humans were intuitive, egalitarian, and innovative. Spark seemed to be developing aspects of both. On the 6th day after their initial contact with the dragon colonies, Zara received an urgent message. The elder dragons had arrived ahead of schedule and were requesting immediate transport to the station. Their message was formal and carried undertones that made Zara's stomach knot with anxiety. They're not just coming to retrieve a lost hatchling, she told Dr. Webb as they reviewed the message. This is some kind of official examination. Perhaps that's good, Webb said, though he didn't sound convinced. They'll be able to assess Spark's health and development needs better than we can. But Zara had been studying dragon culture intensively since finding Spark. She understood the subtext in the formal language of the message. The elders weren't coming as rescuers. They were coming as judges. That night, she sat beside Spark's chamber reading to the hatchling from an old earth fairy tale about an ugly duckling that turned into a beautiful swan. Spark listened intently, its golden eyes fixed on her face, occasionally making soft questioning sounds when she paused. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered when she finished the story. "No matter what anyone else thinks, you're perfect to me." Spark pressed against the chamber wall where her hand rested, and for a moment Zara imagined she could feel the warmth of its trust flowing between them. Tomorrow would bring the elder dragons and whatever judgment they carried with them. But tonight, in the quiet of the lab, she held on to the hope that love and acceptance might prove stronger than tradition and prejudice. The future of dragon-human relations might very well depend on how the galaxy chose to see one small, imperfect, perfectly wonderful hatchling. The docking bay of Harmony's Edge had never felt so small. 3 massive dragon elders glided through the airlock with movements that spoke of centuries of grace and power. Their scales gleamed like polished armor, perfect patterns of gold, silver, and deep crimson that caught the station's lighting and threw it back in brilliant reflections. Elder Corvethus led the group, his golden scales unmarked by time or battle. Behind him came Elder Valara, whose silver scales seemed to shimmer with their own inner light, and Elder Thanor, whose crimson coloring was so deep it appeared almost black in certain angles. Each of them was easily 12 feet tall and radiated an aura of ancient wisdom and authority. Zara felt like an insect standing before these magnificent beings, but she forced herself to maintain eye contact as Dr. Webb made the formal introductions. The dragon's eyes were penetrating, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Dr. Chen, Elder Corvethis spoke, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. We understand you are the one who discovered our lost child. Yes, Elder. I found the hatchling in a protected nursery chamber on Drakmore Prime. And you have been caring for it since? Elder Valara's voice was softer but no less commanding. We all have. The entire research team has been working to ensure its health and development. Elder Thanner stepped forward, his massive head tilting as he studied Zara with obvious skepticism. A human nurturing a dragon hatchling, how unprecedented. There was something in his tone that made Zara's protective instincts flare. The hatchling needed care. We provided what we could. Indeed, Corvethis said. We are here to assess the child's condition and determine the appropriate course of action. The phrase appropriate course of action sent ice through Zara's veins, but she nodded and led the way to the xenobiology lab. Behind her, she could hear the dragon's claws clicking against the station's metal floors, each step a reminder of their immense physical power. When they reached the lab, Spark was engaged in what had become its favorite activity, rearranging the colored stones in its nesting area into complex geometric patterns. The hatchling looked up as the group entered, and Zara saw its golden eyes widen with amazement as it took in the sight of the adult dragons. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The elders stared at Spark with expressions that Zara couldn't read, while the hatchling stared back with obvious wonder and excitement. Then Spark did something that made Zara's heart sink. Instead of the formal posture young dragons were supposed to adopt in the presence of elders, Spark pressed itself against the chamber wall closest to Zara and made soft, questioning sounds in her direction. Elder Thanner's expression darkened. It seeks comfort from a human rather than showing proper respect to its elders. It's just scared, Zara said quickly. This is the first time it's seen other dragons since it was found. Elder Valara moved closer to the chamber, her massive head lowering to study Spark more carefully. The scale patterns are irregular, she noted clinically. The wing structure shows asymmetrical development. There are signs of plague-induced genetic damage, but it's healthy, Dr. Webb interjected. All our tests show normal vital functions. The developmental differences don't appear to affect its physical capabilities. Physical capability is not the only consideration, Elder Corvethis said gravely. He activated a small device that projected dragon language symbols into the chamber. Child, can you read these symbols? Spark looked at the symbols with obvious interest but showed no sign of recognition. Instead, it moved to where Zara stood and made the soft trilling sound it used when it wanted her attention. It doesn't recognize the ancient script, Elder Thanner observed. Its genetic memory patterns have been disrupted. But it's learning, Zara said desperately. Dr. Kim has been teaching it and it's incredibly intelligent. It just learns differently. Elder Valara's head swiveled toward her. Differently how? Dr. Kim stepped forward, tablet in hand. If I may, elders. The hatchling shows remarkable problem-solving abilities, but it uses approaches that are more creative and intuitive than traditional dragon methodology. She activated a recording showing Spark solving one of the puzzle toys. The elders watched in silence as the hatchling bypassed the intended solution method and found a much simpler way to achieve the same result. Human-style thinking, Elder Thanner said, and his tone made it clear this was not a compliment. Adaptive thinking, Zara corrected firmly. It's learning to solve problems in new ways. Isn't that valuable? Elder Corvethis exchanged a long look with his companions. Dr. Chen, do you understand what you are suggesting? Dragons have maintained our cultural and genetic purity for millennia. Our ways have allowed us to survive and thrive across the galaxy. Your ways didn't protect you from the plague, Zara said before she could stop herself. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. All three elders fixed her with stares that could have melted steel. But Zara pressed on, her protective instincts overriding her sense of self-preservation. I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but it's true. Traditional dragon society couldn't adapt quickly enough to counter the Void Swarm's biological weapon. Maybe what you need isn't more of the same. Maybe you need something new. She moved to stand directly in front of Spark's chamber. This hatchling represents more than just a survivor of the plague. It represents the possibility of change, of growth, of adapting to face whatever threats the future might bring. Elder Valara leaned forward, her silver eyes reflecting curiosity rather than anger. You speak of change as though it were inherently beneficial. Change can also mean corruption, degradation, the loss of everything that makes us who we are. Or it can mean evolution, Dr. Novak interjected quietly. In my studies of various species across the galaxy, I've observed that those who adapt and incorporate new elements survive and flourish. Those who remain rigidly unchanged often face extinction. Inside the chamber, Spark had begun making soft, distressed sounds. It could sense the tension in the room and was pressing itself against the wall nearest to Zara, its tiny claws scratching against the transparent barrier. Zara made a decision that would change everything. She activated the chamber's access panel and opened the door. Zara, no, Dr. Webb called out, but it was too late. Spark immediately scurried out of the chamber and up Zara's arm to perch on her shoulder, its tiny claws gripping her lab coat. The hatchling made soft purring sounds and nuzzled against her neck, seeking comfort and reassurance. The gesture was so clearly one of love and trust that even Elder Thanner seemed momentarily taken aback. This is what I mean, Zara said, gently stroking Spark's head. This hatchling has formed bonds that transcend species. It's learning to see the universe through different eyes. Maybe that's exactly what the dragon species needs right now. Elder Corvithus stared at the interspecies display of affection with an expression of deep contemplation. The child has indeed bonded with you, he admitted. Such bonds are not formed lightly even by damaged hatchlings. It's not damaged, Zara said fiercely. It's different. And different doesn't mean wrong. The three elders withdrew to a corner of the lab and began speaking in rapid ancient dragon dialect. Zara couldn't understand the words, but she could read the body language. This was a debate, and from the intensity of their gestures, it was not going in Spark's favor. As she waited for their decision, Zara held the small dragon close and whispered promises she hoped she could keep. Whatever the elders decided, she would not let Spark suffer for being different. The galaxy had already lost too much to rigid thinking and ancient prejudices. It was time for something new, even if that something came in a small, imperfect package with asymmetrical wings and scales that didn't shine quite right. The debate between the elders continued for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. Their ancient dialect was musical and complex, full of subtle tonal shifts that conveyed meaning far beyond simple words. Zara watched their faces and body language, trying to read the direction of their discussion. Elder Thanner seemed to be arguing against something, his crimson scales darkening with agitation. Elder Valara appeared more neutral, occasionally asking questions that seemed to moderate the discussion. Elder Corvithus listened more than he spoke, but when he did contribute, the other two paid careful attention. Spark had fallen asleep on Zara's shoulder, its tiny body warm and trusting against her neck. The hatchling's breathing was soft and regular, and occasionally it made small chirping sounds in its dreams. Whatever dragons dreamed about, Spark seemed to be having pleasant ones. Dr. Webb approached quietly. Zara, there's something you should know. I've been monitoring dragon colony communications since the elders arrived. What kind of communications? Debates about genetic purity protocols. It seems there's a growing movement among some dragon factions to implement stricter breeding controls in response to the plague losses. They're calling it the Pure Scale Initiative. Zara felt her stomach clench. And Spark? Would likely be classified as genetically compromised under such protocols. The implications hit her like a physical blow. If the dragon colonies decided that plague-affected individuals posed a threat to their species' future, Spark could face worse than rejection. It could face elimination. The elders' discussion was winding down. They had moved from animated debate to what looked like formal consensus building, their voices lower and more measured. Elder Corvithus turned back to the human group, his expression unreadable. We have reached a preliminary decision, he announced. However, we require additional information before we can proceed. What kind of information? Dr. Webb asked. Elder Valara stepped forward. We need to understand the full extent of the hatchling's capabilities and limitations. Our preliminary observations suggest significant deviations from normal dragon development patterns. We've run extensive tests, Dr. Kim offered. I can provide you with complete data on its cognitive development, learning patterns, and behavioral adaptations. That will be helpful, Elder Corvethis acknowledged. But we also need to conduct our own assessments using traditional dragon evaluation methods. Zara's protective instincts flared. What kind of assessments? Elder Thanner's eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. Physical challenges appropriate for a hatchling of this age. Memory recall tests. Social behavior evaluations. It's just a baby, Zara protested. You can't put it through some kind of trial. All dragon hatchlings undergo such evaluations, Elder Valara explained. It is how we determine their educational needs and social placement within our communities. But Spark isn't like other hatchlings. It's been isolated, traumatized by the plague, raised by humans. Your traditional tests might not be fair indicators of its potential. Elder Corvethis tilted his massive head, studying Zara with renewed interest. You speak as though you believe this hatchling has potential that our methods might not recognize. I know it does. I've watched it learn and grow and solve problems in ways that surprised all of us. It's creative, empathetic, and incredibly intelligent. But its intelligence doesn't fit your traditional patterns. Intelligence that doesn't fit traditional patterns. Elder Thanor repeated slowly. Some might call that deficiency rather than creativity. Spark stirred on Zara's shoulder, apparently awakened by the sound of voices. It lifted its small head and looked around at the gathered beings with sleepy golden eyes. When it spotted the three elders, it made a soft questioning trill. To everyone's surprise, Elder Valara responded with a gentle rumbling sound in the same pitch. Spark's eyes widened with delight and it attempted to copy the sound. Its vocal cords weren't quite developed enough to produce the exact tone, but the attempt was recognizable. Interesting, Elder Valara murmured. It seeks to communicate despite the developmental limitations. Elder Corvethis moved closer, lowering his great head to Spark's eye level. He made a series of simple sounds, the kind adult dragons used with very young hatchlings. Spark listened intently, then attempted to respond. What came out wasn't traditional dragon speech, but it wasn't random noise either. Spark seemed to be trying to communicate using a mixture of dragon vocalizations and the human speech patterns it had learned. It's creating a hybrid language, Dr. Kim breathed, a fusion of dragon and human communication methods. Elder Thanor's expression had shifted from skeptical to fascinated. Such linguistic innovation is unprecedented. Is that good or bad? Zara asked. Unknown, Elder Corvethis admitted. We have no precedent for evaluating such development. Over the next several hours, the elders conducted their assessments. They tested Spark's physical coordination, which proved adequate despite the wing asymmetry. They evaluated its memory using traditional dragon methods, which showed mixed results. But the most significant test came when they presented Spark with a complex social scenario. In dragon society, hatchlings were expected to demonstrate proper hierarchy recognition, showing deference to elders and appropriate interaction with peers. The test involved presenting Spark with holographic projections of dragons of various ages and ranks, then observing how it responded to each. Spark's response surprised everyone. Instead of showing traditional hierarchical deference, it approached each projection with curiosity and attempted to engage them in what appeared to be play. When the projections didn't respond as expected, Spark turned to Zara with questioning sounds, seeking her guidance on how to interact with these strange beings. It doesn't understand hierarchy, Elder Thanor observed. It understands cooperation, Zara countered. It's looking for connection and mutual interaction rather than dominance and submission. Elder Valara made soft clicking sounds that Zara had learned indicated deep thought. Such behavior patterns would be severely disruptive in traditional dragon society. Or they could be exactly what dragon society needs, Dr. Novak suggested. Cooperation and innovation rather than rigid hierarchy might be evolutionary advantages in a post-plague environment. The elders exchanged another series of looks laden with meaning. Elder Corvethis spoke first. This hatchling represents a fundamental question about the future of our species. Do we preserve traditional values and risk stagnation? Or do we embrace change and risk losing our essential identity? There might be a third option, Zara said carefully. What if Spark doesn't have to choose between being dragon or being something new? What if it could be both? Elder Valara's silver eyes fixed on her. Explain. Let it grow up with both influences, dragon wisdom and human innovation, traditional knowledge and creative problem-solving. It could become a bridge between our species, helping both sides learn from each other. A hybrid being, Elder Thanner said slowly, neither fully dragon nor fully human influenced, but something entirely new. Something that might be stronger than either of its component parts, Elder Corvethus added thoughtfully. Spark had been listening to the discussion with obvious attention, its golden eyes tracking from speaker to speaker, as though it understood far more than anyone realized. When the conversation paused, it made a soft sound and reached out toward Elder Corvethus with one tiny claw. The ancient dragon extended one massive talon, allowing Spark to touch it. The moment of contact seemed to stretch into eternity, a bridge across species and generations, tradition and innovation, fear and hope. Perhaps, Elder Corvethus said quietly, it is time for our species to learn something new. 3 months after the Elder's visit, Harmony's Edge had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a joint human-dragon research facility. The station now housed not only Spark but also 2 young adult dragons, who had volunteered to serve as cultural, bridges, and language teachers. Zara watched from the observation deck as Spark played in the enlarged habitat they had, constructed in the station's main bay. The space was enormous by station standards, with multiple levels, flying areas, and environmental zones that could simulate different planetary conditions. Spark, now nearly twice its original size, was engaged in what appeared to be a complex game with its 2 dragon companions. Thyra was a young silver dragon, barely past adolescence by dragon standards, who had been chosen for her patience and innovative thinking. Dracos was older, his emerald scales marking him as a mid-rank adult who specialized in historical preservation. Together, they were helping Spark learn traditional dragon customs while also learning about human perspectives themselves. It's remarkable how quickly they've adapted to each other, Dr. Kim observed, joining Zara at the viewing window. Spark is learning dragon social behaviors, but it's also teaching the others human concepts like collaborative play and emotional expression. Zara smiled as she watched Spark demonstrate a game it had invented, something involving moving colored stones into patterns while flying. Thyra and Dracos were attempting to copy the game, but their movements were more formal and structured than Spark's fluid creativity. How are the colony leaders responding to the reports? Zara asked. Dr. Kim's expression grew more serious. Mixed reactions. Some are fascinated by the hybrid development model and want to expand the program. Others are concerned about cultural contamination and genetic drift. And the Pure Scale Initiative? Growing stronger, unfortunately. Elder Sarthan has been particularly vocal about the dangers of allowing damaged specimens to influence dragon youth. Zara felt the familiar knot of worry in her stomach. The Pure Scale Initiative had gained support among some dragon colonies, promoting the idea that only genetically perfect dragons should be allowed to reproduce or hold positions of authority. Their rhetoric painted Spark as a dangerous aberration that threatened the future of dragon civilization. But Elder Corvethus is still supporting our research? For now. But he's under increasing pressure to terminate the program and return Spark to a controlled environment. A controlled environment. The euphemism made Zara's skin crawl. She knew what it really meant. Isolation, constant monitoring, and eventual sterilization to prevent Spark from passing on its genetic irregularities. An alert chimed on Dr. Kim's tablet. Emergency transmission from the Andromeda colonies, she said, frowning at the display. It's marked urgent and confidential. They made their way to the communication center where Dr. Webb was already reviewing the incoming message. His face was grim as he gestured them over. It's from Elder Corvethus. The Pure Scale Initiative has called for an emergency conclave to debate the hybrid contamination issue. They're demanding that Spark be recalled immediately for proper evaluation and containment. Containment? Zara's voice came out sharper than she intended. They're talking about a child, not a biological weapon. To them, there may not be a difference, Dr. Webb said quietly. If they've convinced themselves that genetic purity is essential for species survival, then anything that threatens that purity becomes an existential threat. The door to the communication center slid open, and Thyra entered, her silver form barely fitting through the human-sized doorway. She had requested permission to access human areas of the station, something that would have been unthinkable under traditional dragon protocols. Dr. Chen, Thyra said, her voice carrying the musical quality of dragon speech but speaking in careful human standard. I have been monitoring colony communications. There are concerning developments. What kind of developments? Military vessels have been dispatched from 3 major colonies. They claim to be conducting routine patrols, but their flight paths will bring them to the system within 5 days. Zara felt ice form in her veins. They're coming to take Spark. It appears so. Elder Sarthan has convinced the Colonial Defense Council that the hybrid program represents a security threat. Dr. Webb activated the station's secure communication array. I need to contact Earth Command. If Dragon military vessels are approaching our research station... Wait, Thyra interrupted. There is something else you should know. Not all dragons support the Pure Scale Initiative. There are those among us who believe that adaptation and cooperation are essential for our survival. How many? Dr. Kim asked. Difficult to determine. Many keep their opinions private to avoid persecution. But Elder Corvethis has been gathering support for what he calls the New Path Alliance. A dragon civil war, Dr. Webb muttered. That's all we need. Zara looked through the communication center's viewport toward the main bay where Spark was still playing with its companions. The little dragon looked so happy, so full of life and curiosity. The idea that anyone could see this beautiful, intelligent being as a threat was incomprehensible to her. We need to protect Spark, she said firmly, whatever it takes. Zara, Dr. Webb said gently, we're a research station, not a military installation. If the dragon colonies decide to reclaim their property, we don't have the resources to stop them. Then we don't let them, Thyra said, surprising everyone. I formally request political asylum for myself and Dracos under the Human-Dragon Alliance Treaty. The request was unprecedented. Dragons had never sought asylum from their own kind before, but the treaty that governed human-dragon relations did include provisions for political refugees. If we grant your asylum request, Dr. Kim said slowly, you'll be formally renouncing your citizenship in the dragon colonies. I renounce it gladly if it means protecting what we have built here, Thyra replied. This station has become something new, something better than either of our species achieved alone. Spark is not just a hybrid being. Spark is the future. Dracos appeared in the doorway, his emerald scales gleaming under the station's lights. I have been listening to your discussion, he said in his deeper, more resonant voice. I also request asylum, and I bring additional information that may be relevant. What information? Zara asked. The approaching dragon vessels are not unified in their purpose. Captain Zorvak of the Stellar Flame has been in secret communication with New Path Alliance supporters. If we can reach him before the other ships arrive, we might have allies among the dragon military, Dr. Webb finished. Alarms began sounding throughout the station. The communication officer's voice echoed through the corridors. Incoming transmission from the Andromeda Dragon colonies. Priority Alpha. All senior staff to the communication center immediately. As the team gathered around the main display, Elder Sarthan's imposing crimson form filled the screen. His scales were darker than Elder Thanner's, almost black in places, and his eyes burned with fanatic intensity. Research Station Harmony's Edge. Sarthan's voice was like grinding stone. You are harboring stolen dragon genetic material and conducting unauthorized hybrid experiments. You will surrender the aberrant hatchling immediately, or face the consequences of defying dragon sovereignty. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the room in tense silence. Well, Dr. Webb said after a moment, I guess diplomacy is off the table. Zara looked at her colleagues, at the 2 dragons who had chosen to stand with them, at the readouts showing Spark's happy, innocent play in the main bay. The galaxy was about to change, and this small research station had somehow become the center of a conflict that would determine the future of 2 species. Then we prepare for war, she said quietly, because I'll be damned if I let them hurt our little dragon. Through the viewport, Spark performed a graceful loop in the air, its asymmetrical wings carrying it in a flight pattern no traditional dragon had ever attempted. Beautiful, unique, and completely free. That freedom was worth fighting for. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Harmony's Edge had never been designed as a battleground, but its crew was determined to make it as defensible as possible. Chief Engineer Rodriguez worked around the clock to boost the station's shields and weapons systems. while Dr. Webb coordinated with Earth Command for emergency reinforcements. Zara spent most of her time with Spark, trying to explain what was happening without frightening the young dragon. Spark seemed to sense the tension on the station, staying closer to Zara than usual and making soft questioning sounds whenever alarms sounded or crew members ran past speaking in urgent whispers. "Will the bad dragons hurt you?" Spark asked during one of their evening sessions. The hatchling had progressed to simple sentences, mixing dragon vocalizations with human words in its unique hybrid language. "I won't let them hurt any of us," Zara promised, gently stroking the scales behind Spark's ear ridges. "You, me, Thyra we're family now, and families protect each other." Spark's golden eyes brightened at the word family. It was a concept that didn't exist in traditional dragon society, where relationships were defined by hierarchy and genetic lineage. But Spark had embraced the human notion of chosen family with enthusiasm. "Thyra says the starships are coming tomorrow," Spark said, its pronunciation of starships still adorably awkward. "Yes, little one. But remember what we practiced? If anything scary happens, you go to the safe room with Dr. Kim and wait until I come for you." Spark nodded solemnly, but Zara could see the fear in its eyes. This innocent being shouldn't have to worry about being hunted by its own kind. The injustice of it made her chest tight with anger. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Dr. Webb's voice echoed through the habitat speakers. "All senior staff to the command center. We have an update on the approaching fleet." Zara gave Spark a reassuring hug and made her way to the command center, where the main display showed a tactical overview of the local space. 5 dragon ships were approaching in formation, their biometal hulls gleaming like living things against the starfield. "The lead ship is the Stellar Flame," reported Lieutenant Singh, the station's tactical officer. "Captain Zorvac has made contact using encrypted channels. He confirms that he and his crew support the New Path Alliance." "What about the others?" Dr. Webb asked. 2 ships are definitely pure-scale initiative supporters. The remaining 2 are unknown quantities, probably following orders without clear political allegiance. Thyra entered the command center, her massive form somehow managing to move gracefully through the human-sized corridors. "I have been in communication with Captain Zorvac. He reports that Elder Sarthan is aboard the Iron Talon and is demanding immediate surrender of what he calls the genetic aberration." "Over my dead body," Zara muttered. "That may be precisely what he has in mind," Draco said, joining the group. "Sarthan views human-dragon cooperation as heresy. He would rather see both species extinct than see them change." The communication array crackled to life. Elder Sarthan's dark visage filled the screen, his scarred scales marking him as a veteran of countless battles. "Harmony's Edge, this is your final warning. Surrender the aberrant hatchling and the traitorous dragons harboring it, or we will take them by force." Dr. Webb stepped forward, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Elder Sarthan, this is a joint research facility operating under the Human-Dragon Alliance Treaty. Any hostile action against this station would be an act of war against the human government." Sarthan's laugh was like grinding metal. "Your treaty is with the legitimate dragon government, not with genetic deviants and their human sympathizers. You have 1 hour to comply." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Zara could hear her heart pounding. "Well," Dr. Webb said finally, "at least we know where we stand." "How long until Earth reinforcements arrive?" Lieutenant Singh asked. 6 hours minimum. The nearest patrol fleet is in the Centauri system. "We need to buy time," Zara said. "Is there any way to negotiate?" Thira's silver scales darkened with emotion. "Sarthan does not negotiate. He conquers or destroys. It is the old way, the way that led to stagnation and near extinction." Alarms began sounding throughout the station. On the tactical display, 4 of the dragon ships were moving into attack formation. Only the Stellar Flame held position away from the others. "Incoming transmission from Captain Zorvac," Singh reported. The display switched to show a dragon with deep blue scales marked by intricate silver patterns. Unlike Sarthan's scarred visage, Zorvac's face showed intelligence and compassion. "Harmony's Edge, I am breaking formation to provide defensive support. My crew and I will not stand by while the future of our species is destroyed by fear and hatred." "Captain," Dr. Webb responded, "we appreciate your support, but this puts you in direct conflict with your own people. My people are those who choose growth over stagnation, hope over fear. The hatchling you protect represents everything our species needs to survive in the new galaxy. I will defend it with my life. The stellar flame moved to position itself between the station and the attacking ships. On the display, Zara could see weapon systems charging on both sides. They're really going to fight, she breathed. Dragon against dragon. Civil war was inevitable, Draco said sadly. The plague forced us to confront fundamental questions about our identity and future. Some of us chose evolution. Others chose extinction. The first shots were fired by the Iron Talon, beams of concentrated plasma that lit up space like artificial stars. The stellar flame responded with defensive fire, its weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. Spark's habitat was on the opposite side of the station from the battle, but even there the vibrations from weapon impacts could be felt. Zara ran through the corridors, desperate to reach the little dragon before the violence escalated further. She found Spark huddled in its nest, making distressed sounds as the station shook around them. Dr. Kim was already there, having activated the habitat's emergency shields. "It's okay, little one," Zara called out as she entered the protective enclosure. "I'm here." Spark immediately launched itself into her arms, its small claws gripping her lab coat. "The bad dragons are fighting the good dragons," it said, its voice shaking with fear. "Yes, baby, but the good dragons are fighting to protect you, to protect all of us. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me." Zara's heart broke at the pain in Spark's voice. This innocent being was blaming itself for a conflict that had been brewing long before it was found. "This isn't your fault," she said firmly. "This is about choosing between fear and love, between the old ways and new possibilities. You represent hope, Spark. Hope for a better future." The lights flickered as another impact shook the station. Through the habitat's viewports they could see the battle raging in space. The stellar flame was outnumbered but fighting with desperate courage, its captain true to his word about defending the station. Then something unexpected happened. One of the neutral ships, the Silver Wing, broke formation and moved to support Captain Zorvac. Its captain's voice came through the communication channels. "This is Captain Tervana of the Silver Wing. I have seen enough. The Pure Scale Initiative does not speak for all dragons. We stand with the New Path Alliance." The tide of battle was turning, but Zara knew it was far from over. In her arms, Spark had stopped trembling and was watching the display with fascination rather than fear. "The good dragons are winning?" it asked hopefully. "I think they might be," Zara replied. "But even if they do, this is just the beginning. The real challenge will be building something better than what came before." Spark looked up at her with those brilliant golden eyes. "Will you help me learn how?" "Every day for the rest of my life," Zara promised. Outside, the battle continued to rage, but inside the habitat, a small dragon and a human woman held each other and planned for a future where different didn't mean wrong, where love could triumph over tradition, and where two species could become something greater than either had ever been alone. The galaxy was changing, and they were going to help shape what it became. 5 years later, the new Harmony Station floated majestically in the void between human and dragon space, its hybrid architecture a testament to what two species could accomplish when they worked together. The original research facility had been expanded into a full diplomatic complex, trade hub, and cultural exchange center that served as the beating heart of a new kind of civilization. Zara stood on the observation deck of the cultural center, watching a group of human and dragon children play together in the zero-gravity recreation area. The sight still filled her with wonder. Among them was Spark, now a young adult dragon whose unique development had made it the perfect ambassador between the two species. At nearly 10 feet in length, Spark was smaller than most adult dragons, but its asymmetrical scales had developed into patterns of stunning beauty. The irregular markings caught light in ways that created ever-shifting displays of color and brilliance. What had once been seen as defects were now celebrated as artistic masterpieces of natural evolution. "The council session is about to begin," Dr. Kim announced, joining Zara at the viewing window. She now served as the station's chief cultural officer, overseeing the integration programs that had become a model for the galaxy. The Harmony Council was another innovation born from their unique circumstances. Unlike traditional dragon hierarchies or human bureaucracies, it operated on principles of consensus and mutual respect. Representatives from both species worked together to address challenges and opportunities as they arose. "How are the new applications looking?" Zara asked as they made their way to the council chambers. "Overwhelming," We have requests from 47 human colonies and 31 dragon settlements to establish their own harmony stations. The Centauri Initiative alone wants to create a dozen hybrid communities. The council chambers were a marvel of cooperative engineering. Dragon-sized spaces flowed seamlessly into human-proportioned areas, with translation systems and environmental controls that accommodated both species' needs. The seating arrangement deliberately mixed humans and dragons, forcing representatives to work closely with their counterparts from the other species. Zara took her seat as the senior xenobiologist, a position created specifically for the human who had first befriended a dragon hatchling. Around her, the familiar faces of friends and colleagues settled into their places. Thyra and Dracos were now senior cultural advisors, their early defection having paved the way for hundreds of other dragons to choose the path of cooperation. The session began with a report from Captain Zorvac, now Admiral Zorvac of the New Path Defense Fleet. His forces had grown from a single ship to a formidable alliance of progressive dragons and human vessels working together to protect the harmony stations and trade routes. Security remains stable across all 17 operational stations, Zorvac reported. The Pure Scale Initiative has made no aggressive moves in 8 months, though they continued to expand their influence in the outer dragon colonies. Elder Corvethus, who had become the primary dragon spokesperson for the Harmony movement, nodded thoughtfully. Sarthan's faction grows smaller but more radical. They have begun calling themselves the Last Dragons and speak of our hybrid communities as an extinction event. Let them talk, said Dr. Sarah Kim, now the Director of Educational Development. Our population studies show that Harmony communities have both higher birth rates and greater technological innovation than traditional settlements. Evolution favors cooperation. The discussion turned to the day's primary agenda item, the formal recognition of hybrid cognitive patterns as a legitimate form of intelligence. It was a proposal that would have been unthinkable when Spark was first discovered, but the success of hybrid communities had made it inevitable. Spark entered the chambers as the debate began, moving with the fluid grace that had become its trademark. Its unique flight patterns had influenced a whole new school of dragon aerodynamics, and its problem-solving methods were now taught in universities across human space. Honored Council, Spark said, its voice carrying both the musical quality of dragon speech and the emotional flexibility of human communication. I bring greetings from the Youth Integration Program. The program was Spark's own creation, designed to help young dragons and humans learn to work together from an early age. It had been so successful that traditional human schools and dragon education centers were adopting its methods. Our latest cohort includes 300 children from both species, Spark continued. They are developing cognitive patterns that surpass anything either species has achieved individually. We are witnessing the birth of something entirely new. Council Member Rodriguez, representing the Human Colonial Authority, leaned forward. Can you give us specific examples of these enhanced capabilities? Spark's eyes brightened with enthusiasm. Certainly. Yesterday, a mixed team of 7-year-olds solved a quantum mechanics problem that had puzzled our best scientists for months. They approached it using hybrid mathematical concepts that combined dragon spatial reasoning with human intuitive leaps. And the solution was verified? Elder Corvethus asked. Absolutely. Dr. Ways. Team confirmed that the children's approach not only works but is actually more elegant than our traditional methods. Murmur of excitement ran through the chamber. This was the kind of breakthrough that vindicated everything they had worked toward. The formal recognition vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, hybrid intelligence was officially acknowledged as not just legitimate, but potentially superior to either of its component forms. After the session, Zara found herself walking through the station's arboretum with Spark. The space was a miracle of cooperative terraforming, with environments that could support plant life from dozens of worlds. Dragon crystal formations grew alongside human flower gardens, creating beauty that neither species could have imagined alone. Do you ever regret it? Spark asked as they paused beside a fountain that played with water in impossible patterns, held aloft by carefully controlled gravity fields. Regret what? Choosing me over the approval of my own kind. You gave up a lot to protect one small, imperfect dragon. Zara laughed, the sound echoing through the arboretum. Imperfect? Look around you, Spark. Look at what you've become, what you've helped create. You're not imperfect. You're perfect in ways no one could have imagined. They continued walking, Passing groups of children from both species playing games that had never existed before, Spark taught them how to blend dragon traditions with human creativity. "I've been thinking about the future," Spark said, "about what comes next for our communities." "What kind of thinking?" "The galaxy is big, full of other species who might benefit from what we've learned. Maybe it's time to expand our definition of harmony beyond just humans and dragons." Zara smiled, remembering the frightened hatchling she had found years ago. That small, scared creature had grown into a being of wisdom and vision that was already changing the galaxy. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she said. "After all, we've proven that different doesn't mean wrong. It just means new possibilities." Above them, the artificial sky of the Arboretum displayed a view of the local space where ships from dozens of worlds came and went freely, their crews learning to work together in ways that would have seemed impossible just a few years before. In the distance, a group of human and dragon children were singing together, their voices blending in harmonies that neither species had ever achieved alone. The song was wordless but full of joy, hope, and the promise of a future where love could indeed conquer fear. Spark hummed along with the children's song, its unique voice adding new layers to the melody. And Zara, listening to the sound of the future being born, knew that sometimes the most important revolutions begin with a single act of kindness toward someone the world has written off as imperfect. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered, and they would discover them together, one small act of love at a time.